Hello, Data Voyagers. I am Igor Alcantara, and I am here to record another video on our Qlik Certifications preparations tips and tricks series. This is the third video in the series, and it's about the Qlik Sense Data Architect exam. And of course, all information that I'm providing is as of today, the date that this video is being published. If things change in the future, I do not have a time machine, so I cannot go into the future to provide information that did not happen yet. But usually it's pretty much consistent. So if you study to the exam, and even if the exam changes, usually it doesn't change as much. So there is one thing. Um, this is the third video. I highly recommend you don't have to watch all of the videos, only the videos for the certification you're studying. So if you're studying for the Qlik Sense Data Architect, this is the right video for you. However, I highly recommend for everyone to watch the first video in the series, which is an overall tips and tricks for Qlik certification. That is a requirement or a highly recommendation for every single person taking any Qlik certification. So I highly recommend you go there and watch it. If you watch it again but don't remember exactly what it is about, you can rewatch it as always. And as always, I'll ask you to, if you're not yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So you can go here, Data Voyagers YouTube channel, subscribe to it. You can enable the notifications so you'll be notified when we get new content available. Also, share your favorite videos in your social media, in your LinkedIn, with your friends, colleagues, so then we'll increase our audience. All right. And check out our website, datavoyage.net, where we have the blog posts, YouTube videos, our social media links, and the podcast and everything, and also our online store where we have pretty cool T-shirts and stickers and travel bags, and there's a lot of cool stuff there. So check it out. It's all in datavoyages.net. So let's get started. So let me jump into this presentation and let's talk about how you can prepare for the Qlik Sense Data Architect. But before telling you what you have to study, let's examine the exam structure. So the exam has multiple questions, as always. The questions there are all like you have like multiple options, and you select one of the options. That's the style of the exam. There are 50 questions. This is exactly the same as the Qlik Sense Business Analyst, which is the second video in the series. So same number of questions, same passing score. 50 questions, you need at least 62% score to pass. That means you need to get it right 31 questions, and you have 2 hours for the exam, which means on average, what I recommend as the time per question is 2 minutes. But 2 minutes times 50 is not 120, it's 100. Well, yeah, it's because it's good to have some time left on the clock so you can review the questions. And time management, as I always say, it's extremely important. So keep track on time so then you don't end up only having 5 minutes to answer like 10 questions, 15 questions, and then there's not going to enough time. And then you're probably not going to pass. So make sure you establish some milestones. For example, after 1 hour, you need at least 30 questions answered. If 1 hour pass and you don't have 30 questions, you have less than 30 questions, then you need to, speed up a little bit. This exam, just like the other one, there's some formatting issues. So like there's some line breaks that do not exist, some spaces that should be there, they're not there. There's some formatting issues. So pay attention to those. So what I recommend you to read carefully each question and the options within the question. So that makes this exam a little bit more difficult to read for some of the questions. Not all the questions are like when I took the exam recently, it was like 5-6 questions out of the 50. So not a lot, but that's a little time consuming. Now, what are the exam topics? So the exam topics in this case is not necessarily just what you have to study. We'll go specifically what are the most important concepts. But this is what is covered. And let me hide my video here so we can see the full slide. And let's hide the camera. There we go. So identifying requirements, data connectivity, and data module. There's not all this, I broke this in two slides. So remember how many questions or what is the passing score is 62%. So identifying requirements, data connectivity, data modeling. If you get those, all of those correct, you still don't have enough. So I'll cover that. So, but these are very, very important topics. There's a lot of data modeling. There's some data connectivity, but these at least should guide you when you study. At least 20% of your time studying needs to be dedicated to identifying requirements, that kind of stuff. So don't neglect these items. The last two categories are data transformation. This is the most of the exam, data transformation. There's a lot of load script. And validation, there's a little bit of validation like troubleshooting and testing, the kind of stuff, and deployment, the kind of stuff. This exam, it's, I'll say, kind of the opposite of the business analyst. The business analyst is a lot of focus on the end user. Is a lot of focus on the UI. There's like data manager, not scripting. Like Qlik scripting is like it's less hands-on coding, is more like an overview of data modeling, the kind of stuff. Where we get dips is like requirements and UI and charts and the kind of stuff. This one, we have some of those, but it's more for developers. Now, let's get into the actual topics. What should you study? By the way, this is not all that you should study. All this is at least the minimum. If you nail these topics, you have a pretty good chance to pass the exam. But however, take a look at the previous slides. They not necessarily represent 100% of the exam because there are multiple questions. So the bank of questions, it's large. So not two people will not do this, they get the same questions. That's my point. But if you nail all of these topics, you have a pretty good chance. All right. But the best way to study, besides all of that, is actually doing Qlik applications and thinking about and figuring out problems and data modeling issues and dipping down in scripting and more advanced stuff. This is like work experience is the best way to prepare. Well, let's talk about some of these topics, like data model types, things like Snowflake schema, star schema, relational database schema, how you can improve, what is the advantage, when to use one, when to use the other one. This is important. Full reload versus partial reload, and things like within the partial reload, how you configure partial reload, problems that happen when you have partial reload, like merge and that kind of stuff. How can I calculate a file size? There are functions to calculate, let's say, the size of a QVG or find if a file exists or not exists. Is also part of something else that I'll describe in a minute. Master calendar, different techniques, different methodology to create master calendar, and time dimensions. So there'll be the scripting, data modeling of a calendar, but also the use of that in a UI. Roles and responsibilities, like who should you contact in case you have this? It's like the gathering requirements and identifying requirements. So things like, oh, should I contact the CFO or the IT manager or things like that. And also requirement gathering. I want to get requirements. Who should I contact? How do I gather requirements? And how I interpret requirements. So there's little requirements. So what should I do? Should I do this data module? Should I do multiple applications? Should I do all DAG? The kind of stuff. Master items, of course, now to use master items, consume master items, what are things that are specific to master items, like dimension master items, we can set colors, things like that. Set analysis. There were not a lot of questions regarding set analysis, but it's good to know set analysis because there's some questions where You need to understand set analysis to understand that the set analysis is not the answer. So understanding set analysis is important. Limiting data. How do you limit the data? Let's say, oh, only the last 3 years or up to a certain date, things like that. Preceding load is another important thing. And all the things regarding preceding loads, including best practices. Data connections, creating data connections, multiple types of data connections, using the data connections, which includes like the lib statement and the data spaces and actually the overall like spaces in general, folders within spaces, all of that involves spaces. Identifying data connection requirements. I remember in my exam there was a question like, I have this different data sources, like how many data connections should you create? What are the types of data connections? Things like that. Loops, like for loop, while loop, if statements, loading multiple files. Oh, there's a bunch of CSV files and they have kind of the same structure, how you load them all. So there's another thing. Composite keys, synthetic keys, a lot of things about keys like linking tables, etc. Mapping tables, creating, consuming, when to use it, and particular things about mapping tables. For example, they automatically drop at the end. You need to know that. Join, all kinds of join, outer join, left join, inner join, right join, all kinds of like concatenating tables, inline, loading line, hash functions, outer number, composite keys. So those are all the important topics. REST APIs, connecting to REST APIs, when to use REST APIs, how to consume REST APIs with connection command, when to use it, what can you do with connection, um, and also things like how can you can customize the URL to the REST API using with connection. Paging REST APIs, like say there's like you want to load multiple pages, everything about REST APIs. Migrate to the cloud. I remember there were like a couple of questions migrating Qlik View to actually Qlik View to Qlik Sense, not necessarily the cloud, but is more in relation to what is the differences, technical differences for an app developer between Qlik View and Qlik Sense. In that case, when I say Qlik Sense is not cloud, is on-prem. Section access, including when to use it, how to use it, section access, section application, omit, um, a statement, everything that involves section access, including service account. It has to be in the section access. When you using uppercase, when not using uppercase, variables, in especially variables in the script. When you use it, there'll be a few examples variables in the script. Can I create a variable in the script and use in the UI and vice versa? Things of that nature. Incremental load, different techniques, how to do it, like insert, update, delete, um, etc. Everything involving incremental load. And chart custom formatting, like background color, for example. So that involves the color and color expression. When you're using the chart expression, when you're using the in the master items. ODAG. I remember there were like 2 or 3 questions when I took the exam about ODAG. Dynamic views. I remember there was one question involving dynamic views. Cross table, generic table, they kind of the opposite of one another. So understand how to use them, the syntax, etc. And a lot of script and chart record level functions, like functions related to record, like row level. For example, previews, above, peak, first sorted. First sorted is not row level, but it's some other kind of functions like aggregation, concat, functions in general, um, mix color, those kind of functions. Include script, which is an include and most include statement, when to use, how to use it, etc. And overall troubleshooting. There's a few questions where there's a problem in the script. What is the source of the problem? How we investigate, etc. Which also includes debugging, error mode variable, script error list, that kind of stuff. So those are some of the few topics you study. If you nail every single one of these topics, you will get you get enough to pass the exam. But again, not 100% because they might have some extra stuff. So combine these few topics you study slide with the previous slides, like the extra exam topics. So make sure you read them and you understand what each one of these means. All right. So This is it. Thank you for your time, and until next time.